Hey there, goblins. Welcome to Goblin Salvage Rights. My name's Robert,
And I'm Eric.
and today we're talking about making magical items.
Making magical items.
Magical, wonderful, wondrous items out of the new player core. So we're basically talking about how to make a magical item for your campaign or something like that. We're not talking about crafting items. We're talking about
Very
actually
different.
making an item to give to your players. Or if you're a player, maybe you come up with a magical item and pitch it to your GM and be like, hey, my dude invented this. Or like,
Yep.
I want to find this in the world.
And it's not as easy as saying, hey, I got this cool idea, let's do it. There's actual structure and mechanics and rules that go into them.
Significant
because
amount.
we got to keep things balanced, right?
Mhm.
Don't want to go
Yeah.
breaking our games before we even started.
Awesome. So before we jump into the topic,
Yep.
first we got to talk about Patreon, bro.
Mhm.
All right. I'm not going to bore you with the regular spiel. What I would love for you to do, go down to the description. We have a roadmap for 2024 that we're working on right now for all of our Patreon posts for the whole year. Go down there, check it out. If it's something that interests you, then sign up. Give us some dollars so we can make more cool shit. Or
It's that easy. And we get better the more feedback we have.
Yeah.
So if you want to have a vested interest in our shared community, this is a good way to do it.
We also have a Discord with a special Patreon-only Discord section where we talk about updates on what we're doing. Pretty much, I sign in at least once a week or twice a week saying where I'm at on our projects. You get pretty much direct access to us whenever you want. I got any questions, we jump on it immediately. Eric and I practically live on Discord now. So,
Yep. And a lot of those conversations that happen on that particular channel, they help to direct the future of the content that we put out. So
I mean, like literally many episodes of the podcast and on the Patreon
have been a result of somebody just opening their mouth saying, hey, wouldn't it be cool if you guys did X, Y, Z?
We're like,
Why, yes, it would be.
that would be very cool. Great idea, person.
Right.
Thank you. So yeah, we're talking about items today. What I would love to see is people go down to the comments and post the items they made with the item creation rules.
Yep. We're going to sort of teach you how to make items. We're going to show you examples of items that we have created. And then when all that's done, exactly that, do it yourself. And then we'll have a chat in the comments and tell each other how cool each other's stuff is.
Yeah, I would love to make like a compendium of items that are user generated.
Yeah.
And I could just like throw it on a big
that would be
wiki
fun.
or something like that. You know what I mean? Like these are the Goblin Salvage Rights items, and they're just like, item user, and then I'll give each item a balance rating, and then Eric will give each item a jazz rating.
A jazz rating.
Yeah.
Yeah. 5 jazz hands.
An arbitrary scale from 3 to 17 jazz hands.
Yeah. That's about the most jazz thing that could have come out of your mouth right there.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to go ahead and just put one stipulation on this thing.
Mhm.
It's got to have the goblin tag somewhere in your item.
Ooh. Does it have to have the goblin tag in the item or goblin flavor in the item?
Goblin tag.
Goblin tag.
Yeah. So if it's like magical, alchemical goblin, it's an actual tag.
Creation with restrictions. I like it. I like it.
So yeah, that's putting the cart before the horse though. How do we make items? Why do we make items?
We make items for multiple different reasons, right? So what I got written down here is just a handful of reasons why you would make an item. They're the ones that came immediately to my mind. The first one, of course, is the thing I love most in all fiction, which is world building.
Okay.
World building is what excites me the most about games. It's what excites me the most about reading fantasy books and stuff like that. Cool magic systems or pieces of history that are described not through exposition, but through the things you find, to give a Galorian example, if the players, this is the one literally out of the book, actually, if the players are going through a dungeon in old Thessalonian, ruins, then maybe they find some runic magical items because Thessalonia was famous for its Thessalon was famous for its runic magic.
Yeah.
So, if you have a cool setting, drop items that are left over. Kind of think about it anthropologically.
Sure.
what would have maintained itself over time?
That makes perfect sense to me. And here's some of the struggle I was having as I was trying to figure out how to approach this particular conversation is there's already hundreds of items out there.
Mm-hmm.
And there are already runic items that would evoke that sense of Thessalonian wonder.
Mm-hmm.
Why would I not pick one of the many, many, many dozens of those that currently exist? If we have finite resources and energy and time to devote to our hobby, how do we make the creation of items of such value that we do that? We do spend our time on that instead of somewhere else reading other books or prepping for a game or whatever.
Well, that kind of leads me into my second bullet point here, which is you can make items to make other players feel cool.
Yeah.
So if a player, I mean, you'd imagine the game designers have made one item for every kind of player under the sun.
Mhm.
But then I keep meeting players who come up with wacky ideas.
Sure.
And, the item I created for today's episode is literally made bespoke for one of the players at my table.
It is. Who could that be?
Gabby. So, we'll get that obviously into that at the end of the video
Sure.
where we talk about items we made. But, crafting these items, there should be a reason for them. And that reason should often be to reach out to your players and give them something that they otherwise couldn't have had by just shopping for it in the book.
Okay, that's totally fair. I'm going to do the douchey thing and answer my own question. I've been going around on this too. Like, I was very excited to have this conversation and do this particular concept, how to build an item in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. And as I got into it, I thought, oh my God, what did I do? I suggested this particular one, and now we're doing it. And I'm like, why would anybody care? Just go pick one out of the book. There's a laundry list of items you can choose from, right? And then I circled back to, oh, this is the reason why I would want to do it. And it comes down to the test, the silhouette test. If you put a Disney character up on the with no features up on the wall, you know who Mickey Mouse is just by their silhouette. You know who Goofy is just by their silhouette. Donald Duck, all the characters pass the silhouette test. And there's something similar to that with TTRPGs. As we're making our own characters and we want to remember them years from now, and we want other players to remember them years from now, how can you do that with items? Can you do that with items? And I started thinking, well, Gandalf the Grey, he's got a staff. You never see the guy without a staff. It's important because each of the individual Istari, of which he is only one, I think there's 5 total, they have specific staves.
Nerd alert.
Yeah. And then I started thinking about Star Wars, all of the Dark Lords of the Sith, even people who haven't seen it will never confuse Darth Maul for Darth Vader, for Darth Sidious, for any of the others, Darth Grievous. Their lightsabers are differently constructed. Darth Maul has sort of like a bow stick, kung fu kind of lightsaber that's double bladed, and he wheels it around like a bow staff.
The demon looking one?
Exactly. See, have you seen Star Wars? Because I know you're not a super fan of the
yeah,
the IP.
I've seen like all the movies at least once.
You knew exactly who I was talking about because I was talking about an item that he had. Nobody else has that specific item. And who's the elf in Lord of the Rings? Orlando Bloom played him. Legolas, right?
Yeah.
So Legolas in that specific movie is identical to every other elf in the entire book series, in the entire movie series. How can you tell one elf from another if you're just looking at him? Well, he turned a shield into a surfboard.
Well, he's sarcastic.
A sled. He takes items and then he does these crazy, insane things with them. Oh, that's the elf I was thinking about, right? So you can itemize people. Neo from The Matrix has, I guess, his jacket or his computer or something. So all of these,
okay,
a whole bunch of characters all over, comics and movies and everything. They have a little thing with them. Batman has his gadgets. James Bond has his gadgets. People have things that help to create that identity of that character, and we remember them. That's kind of how I got back into this conversation. Going, okay. Of course, I want to customize items for my players, for me.
So you're basically saying, like, give your players the gadgets that will make them iconic in the story that you're creating?
Yeah, and make them stand out from other 5th level fighters, from other 17th level sorcerers with the same bloodline everybody else has, because we're all min-maxing.
Now that we're talking about it, you could also do it as a way to encourage players to act in certain ways. You know what I mean? Like the item I'm going to be given to Gabby is like a +1 athletics item, but it also allows you to break down doors better.
Sure. And Gabby is playing the Rageaholic Barbarian.
Yeah. So
So that makes
now I'm
perfect
like,
sense.
break down some doors more. You know, I'm
Mhm.
encouraging style of play by giving them an item that is good at a specific thing.
Sure.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
So yeah, I think that's important because items are characters, characters are items. They sort of have this symbiotic upthrust, and the more I guess simpatico the character and the items are with one another, the better we remember them further down the road.
Absolutely.
Um, so yeah, I'm in.
You're in. The other idea I had for the reason why is MacGuffins.
MacGuffins. What about them?
So I looked up the definition of a MacGuffin,
Mm-hmm.
and the MacGuffin is literally an item that has no intrinsic value that drives the plot forward.
Yeah. Sometimes it doesn't even have an identity. That's a Hitchcock thing you're referencing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what if we just give it value?
Yeah.
So like just the MacGuffin is a key that unlocks a certain door in the backyard of the bad guy.
Okay.
But it's also a key that does like cool shit.
Mhm.
So like later on when the characters have defeated that bad guy and moved on to the next greater bad guy, we've all read Adventure Paths at home. They still have this cool key left over from when they, killed bad guy 1.
Sure.
And they're
It's
like,
part trophy, part still useful item even after that
exactly.
Plot point has been expunged.
Yeah, it's like the magical key. You put it on your key ring and it gives you +1 to picking locks or something.
Sure. Yeah.
Something like that. You know what I mean? Like give a MacGuffin. A MacGuffin is a trophy, like you said. And then when you give it power and you let it stay with the party, they can end up with like a series of MacGuffin trophies in a sense that they could like, that's like who their character becomes,
Sure. Yeah. And I guess at the end of the day, if you're going to take the trouble to build an item rather than just grab one that currently exists by actual professional developers who have been spending years doing these things, and here I am with my amateur hour building items and hoping they're balanced and I have the right gold value attached to them and that sort of thing. It's got to be for a specific purpose. And that specific purpose is to make it more memorable and stick in people's minds so that years down the road, they'll be like, yeah, it was that specific Jedi with that specific lightsaber. Or, that particular elf that had the sled, made out of a shield. He used the shield to sled down things. These are the things people remember. Nobody remembers a level 5 fighter because there's so many of them. Nobody remembers any one of a million builds that we do from game to game to game unless you give them that particular item, that trinket, that something that makes people go, oh, he was the guy with that greater staff of flame that, kept trying to explode when he, rolled his 5 or lower.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
We remember tchotchkes more so than people, unfortunately.
Or if anything, tchotchkes engrave a moment in time that allows our brains to remember the hero, to remember the character.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. They're like markers, milestones.
Yeah.
So yeah,
how do we make these freaking things?
That's
sure the real question.
There's something on page 130 through 133 of the GM core that will tell us how to do so.
Absolutely. So we did another episode that you should go check out later called How to Build a Monster. Those monster creation rules were very itemized in the sense that there was a definitive step 1, 2, 3, 4.
They were discrete. Yeah,
discrete.
For sure.
Yeah. Look at you, word guy.
Hey, early.
That's why we pay you the big bucks. Thanks, Patreon. That was a callback. And
I see what you did.
The thing here is there aren't any discrete steps, really.
Not really. It's basically headings saying these are the things you need to watch out for. Yeah. Move along. So you don't even have to do these in order. You can do them totally out of order and you're still good.
So what we did is we basically created a discrete set of steps to take just because that's easier for people at home to follow along.
It helped us get through this exercise and it's replicatable.
Yeah, we created the framework after reading the episode and then we followed that framework to recreate an item and then to make our own items.
Yeah.
So first we're going to go through the steps and then we're going to talk about using those steps to make a famous item, the Coyote cloak.
The Coyote cloak.
And then we're going to talk about items we made and why we made them.
I'm excited about this. Ask me why.
Why are you excited about this?
Because my Wednesday druid has the Coyote cloak, and I'd like to know how it was put together.
It's almost like this is a themed episode on Kingmaker. So step 1 is concept and picture, right? So we're going to come up with the concept. Maybe we have a picture in mind of like a picture inspired us. It's a cool item.
Yep.
Step 2, we're going to define the item. What is the item? Is it a gauntlet? Is it a ring? Is it a sword? Is it a shield?
A wand, a potion,
cloak?
alchemical bomb.
This is where your concept and the picture really come in handy. Yeah. From there, we're going to immediately identify and define the section of your item. So the chapter that we're referencing here basically gives you some introductory information about like what should you be doing. And then it goes specifically and breaks up into sections for like ammunition, alchemical items, staffs, structures, talismans, wands, scrolls, runes, so on and so forth. Worn items in this case. So we're going to define our section, and then from from there we're going to determine the abilities that we want and the consistency of those abilities that we want. So the Coyote cloak has a constant ability of +1. And it also has another constant ability that just always helps you. But maybe you have what developers call a spell in a jar, where it's basically like you've got this jar, you open the cap, you toss it out, and once per day you can throw a spell out. You know what I mean? Or maybe you can just always a decanter of endless water, constantly pour water out. You know what I mean? So determine what the actual spell abilities do and how often they're going to do them.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Moving on to 5, determine the level of the item.
Yeah. So once we know what we're doing, we know what spells we're kind of emulating here, we're going to very discreetly and succinctly look at our chapter, reference the beginning of the chapter here.
There's only 4 pages in this chapter, by the way. Super quick.
Yeah. We're going to reference 1 page, and we're basically going to determine the level of the item based on the highest spell level or spell effect we're emulating within the item. Sometimes it depends on the consumable and stuff like that. After that, we're going to jump straight into the DC. If it has a DC, we just look at a chart.
This part's super easy.
Yep. You look at a chart, you find the DC, and then price. Yep. So we're going to look at price and be like, okay, it's a level X item. They have like a sliding scale. Some items are a little less, some items are a little more, depending on how important they are. They have primary, secondary, and tertiary. And then finally, we're going to take this item we just made, right? We have what it does. We have how often it does it. And we're just going to Control F on Archives and Nethies. And we're going to compare it to other items that exist. Maybe you've done this step before, jumping into the item. That's a logical way to go about it. That's what I did for the Coyote cloak and my item. But like maybe you didn't, and you just created your item. You thought it was cool. Now we're going to compare it against other items that are created and make sure that it's in line with power level and power scaling.
And this is where the value in having hundreds of items that currently exist come into play. You got a lot to measure it against. If you want to do a piece of carpet that flies through the air, it exists. If you want to modify a cloak that shoots blades from underneath, it exists.
Yeah, the best piece of advice I can give to anyone who's trying to design their own content for PF2E or any TTRPG is make your thing and then compare it against what already exists.
Yeah.
Is your thing balanced? Well, I don't know. Do other things of similar power level do similar things? If yes, then it's probably balanced.
Yeah.
And if in a game like Pathfinder 2nd edition, the items, because of the way the game is designed, so long as you follow this level system pretty much to the T or as close as you can, you're not going to break the game. Like, because abilities are tied to actions and actions constrain what you can do in any given round, you can give your players, I'd argue you could give your players an infinite amount of money, but constrain them on level of items they can acquire, and they won't be that much more powerful than a regular party in any given encounter. Over the course of many, many, many encounters, they may be more powerful. But in any one encounter, they can only be so powerful. So those are the 8 steps. It's to go over them one more time. It's concept and picture, define the item, reference the section of your item, determine the ability and consistency of the item, determine the level, then you go to DC, and then finally price. Bada bing, bada boom, you're done. You compare it against other items, make sure it's in line with the power level, and you ship it. I would err on the side of doing this faster than slower. Like, don't worry about your item being too broken. As long as you follow these steps, it's probably not going to be. Yeah. And if it is, that's okay. Just give other players cool broken items.
We'll all be broken together.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm
like,
sure there's a song.
I mean, no, but I'm being serious. Like,
Sure.
from a design perspective,
Mhm.
if we're trying to create a great experience for everyone at the table, if you accidentally give a player, like an item that's too powerful and they begin outshining everyone else at the table for some given reason,
Mhm.
just give a powerful item to everyone else. And then if you have to adjust your encounters a little bit, that's fine.
Yeah, I can see certain people being comfortable with that particular approach. I can see others going, well, I'd rather not do it at all if it's not completely balanced. And I think one of the cool things about the this particular 4-page chapter here is they teach you how to color between the lines when it comes to item creation. You can't go so far that you're going to break the game because these tables prevent you from doing that. All you got to do is know what level you're talking about, and then boom, you have a DC. What level are we talking about? Boom, you've got a price.
Yep.
There's even suggestions on the permanent magic item price table. You know, if your
The
level,
consumable price table and the permanent magic item price table
Mhm.
actually reveal a bunch about how the game is designed to work
Yep.
in ways that they don't actually talk about in the chapter.
Mhm.
I don't know if you want to get into this, but like they basically line up all the levels that you should have, the minimum levels that you should have access to certain items. Like level 2, you have access to a +1 weapon. Level 3, +1 skill item. Level 4, +1 striking
let's
weapon.
dig into that a little bit when we actually get to that
So on and so
particular
forth.
step in our 8-step process here.
Absolutely.
I think that's step 7. So yeah, why don't we talk about item creation and the steps and what we did to make our items happen?
Oh, let's cover the wilderness cloak, the coyote cloak first.
Coyote cloak first.
Yeah.
I'm
We're building an item that exists in the game already,
Mhm.
and you'll see that it follows the design philosophy to a T, actually. So, step 1, we getting back to that concept, wilderness cloak, perfect for a ranger type who is doing wilderness adventure and stuff like that. Cool. So, defining the item, like it's a worn item. Obviously, it's a cloak. We're designing a cloak here.
Mhm.
So, we're gonna go to the worn items section. Just read this little diddle over here. This little paragraph. It basically warns you against. It just warns you like, hey, worn items have to be invested in. Keep that in mind. You can only have 10 of them. So if this is something that fits within that scale of power that you should need to invest in, that's probably a good idea.
Mhm.
Sweet. Determine ability. So that's number 3, reference your section. Number 4, determine ability consistency. Okay, so like once per day, to constant, right? Those are your 2 major consistency ranges. It's either you can cast a thing in a spell in a bottle once a day, all the way up to it has happening all the time, decanter of endless water, right?
Mhm.
So in this case, it's a constant +1 ability. And the other ability we're going to come up with is, let's say, oh, I don't know, when you go to survive on the land, you're twice as good at it because you're a coyote of abundance, right? So when you go to, I think the literal ability is like when you subsist
Mhm.
and you succeed at a subsist, you get um, twice as many food as
Yep.
normal, right?
Yeah, if you critically succeed. Mhm.
Sure. So that's awesome. All right. So it's a stat boost, constant ability. That's fine. And then it's a minor ability tacked on, right? But that minor ability is very, very situational, right? Cool. So we're moving on to determining the level, right? Well, this is where things kind of diverge in the item creation formula. If you're emulating a spell ability, you basically take the spell and either add 2 to 4 levels to the
Mhm.
caster that could cast that spell. So in the book, they have a great example. Fireball. If you're casting Fireball, that's a 3rd level spell. You
Mhm.
got to be a 5th level caster. If it's a once a day item,
Mhm.
you need to add 2 levels to that item,
Mhm.
right?
So we're at 7.
a 7th level item. If it can cast the Fireball 4 times a day, or multiple times a day, you add 4 to the level instead. So it goes from 5 to 9
Mhm.
minimum, and it always says minimum, right? In the case of a static +1 plus a minor ability, there's a chart. You literally have a chart in front of you, right? So the chart literally says 3rd level, +1 skill item.
Mhm.
Done. It's easy. I look at a chart that we have our thing, ladies and gentlemen.
Yep.
+1 item or +1 bonus, level 3 item. Okay, easy. All right, we're moving on.
I noticed there's a version of this same cloak at 9th level as well.
Yeah.
And it gets you a +2 item bonus.
Yep. And
instead
if
of
we
+1
look
item
right here,
bonus.
level 9 +2 skill item.
It says so right there. Yep.
It lines up perfectly. And then the minor ability also gets upgraded. Instead of doubling it on a crit success, it quadruples it on a crit success.
Mhm.
But frankly, if you're level 9 and you're subsisting, like, what are we doing here? You know
what setting are you playing in?
Like, you better be in the fucking Underdark or whatever to have to subsist for that
Sure.
long. And why aren't you just casting magical food or, you know what I mean? Like, Stupendo's magical mansion, you know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So, if this item had a DC, next step is choose a DC. If this item had a DC, we have the level now. Let's just go to the magic items by DC.
Mm-hmm.
It's a level 3 item, DC 17. Done. It doesn't have a DC, but if it did, we have the number now. 7th step, price. Cool. It's a level 3 item. Here's where things get a little bit nuanced. There's a range. And they basically define the range as primary, secondary, and tertiary items,
Mhm.
right? So primary item is an item that you use to attack stuff with or do perception checks, like +1 striking weapons or magical armor, runic weapon, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Things that have a big impact on combat is how they phrase it in the
Yep,
book. So
exactly.
stuff you're just going to see at the it's a front burner ability. You know,
Mhm.
it shows up in every game. It doesn't show up every 3rd or 4th game.
Right. Secondary, right in the middle of the pack of the range, we've got they give significant secondary benefits or enhance highly consequential non-combat or support skills like medicine or crafting.
Mhm.
Right. That's right out of the book. So these are powerful abilities that may or may not happen in combat.
Sure.
Right. And then tertiary abilities are basically just like everything else, you know? So it's your.
I like how they phrase it. Tertiary items with low value are weird or very specific items.
Mhm.
Ones not usually core to a character's build, especially strange ones, might fall into the gaps between 2 levels.
Yeah. So these are like
It is sort of a catch-all for everything
items
else.
for Johnnies.
Yeah.
Basically. These are items for Johnnies. If you're a Johnny and you got that one weird, quirky thing, you're a tertiary boy. That's all I'm saying. You're a tertiary boy. And where does this come in?
So many jokes.
Well, there's a range. So for a 3rd level item, you've got a range
45
of,
to 60 gold pieces.
exactly. So, you know, the Coyote cloak is +1 to survival. That's not a combat-y kind of thing, I
Sure.
don't think.
Nope.
But it's got the secondary ability. That's kind of cool.
Mhm.
So let's say, I don't know, middle of the pack, right?
Yeah.
55-ish gold. Sounds
Sure.
about right. Something like that. Yeah, let's go for it.
Yeah, there's a 15-point spread between the values. So just picking somewhere between 1 and 5, 6 and 10, and 10 and 15. It's pretty straightforward. And even if you mess this up, it's not gonna break anything.
Yeah, the out of all the things you could mess up, this price range
Mhm.
is like the easiest.
I kind of broke my head over this, trying to figure out, well, what's the exact gold piece value I'm supposed to do for my particular item?
Hmm.
And then I realized it doesn't matter as long as
Okay,
I get
so-
into the thirds.
The Coyote cloak is 60 GP.
60 gold.
So I guess, I mean,
That's
this
the high end?
sounds like a secondary item to me,
It does, yeah, because it's almost like an expiration mode item.
but it has it at the full gold piece value, which you'd
Mhm.
expect for a primary item.
Mhm.
So I think I think what we can take from this is, when in doubt, just make it the most expensive
Sure.
in the range.
Yep.
And it'll probably
Yeah, it's
be
kind of
fine.
like when we were talking about how to build a monster, there were a number of places within different steps where it said, look, if you're struggling with this, just pick the high value.
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
default to high.
Default to high.
This is that.
I think so too. That's a pretty logical. And these ranges seem pretty well within each other. I mean, at like 16th level, the discrepancies from like 8 grand to 10 grand.
And again, there's a chart. Just match the level of the item
Mhm.
with the range and then pick something in that range.
Right.
And you're coloring within the lines.
Exactly. So Now, the last step of our little process here, let's compare it to another item, Eric.
This is the fun one.
Yep. So I picked up the easiest one, which is the item right next to it in the book, which is the crafter's eyepiece.
Okay.
Okay. So the crafter's eyepiece, let's have a little guessing game. What do you think the crafter's eyepiece does, Eric?
It probably gives you a +1 or 2 to crafting checks.
+1.
+1. Okay.
Because
it's low.
Because
right,
it's low. It's a 3rd level item.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
What is it called? Crafter's eyepiece?
Crafter's eyepiece.
What else would it do? Allow you to more accurately gauge the value of an item?
Nope.
No? Okay.
So the crafter's eyepiece, when I think it's like when crafting or I was about to pull it up, it doesn't matter. When crafting or repairing an item, you basically like get back more of its HP.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Right? So you're really good at fixing things. It gives you flat bonus for crafting checks and then very situational bonus.
Sure.
The thing I'm trying to harp on here is that the more situational and niche the secondary use for an item is, the less value it has overall.
Of course.
Right.
Yep.
But if this was like +1 to 2 skills, now we're in a whole new territory. We're in a whole new ballpark. And if I remember correctly, there aren't a lot, if any, items I can think off the top of my head that give you a bonus to 2 skills. Normally, every item gives you a bonus to 1 skill.
Sure. Yeah.
We're talking about something like the Belt of Giant Strength, which still exists, but it's a 17th level item.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of push those to the like apex.
Yep.
Kind of
Too rich for my blood.
Too rich for my blood. So yeah, we just created the Coyote Coke, ladies and gentlemen. Yay!
Woohoo!
So that's pretty straightforward, right, Eric?
Yeah, for the most part. Yep.
Mm-hmm. So let's then dig into making our own items and see how that kind of relates to this little, thing we got going on here. This little 8-step process.
Perfect. How do we want to do this? Because we both created an item.
Yeah, no, go ahead. You talk about your item creation process first.
Okay.
And I've been talking for too long as it is.
Some days that's me. So I really wanted to create an item that that's kind of not unique to a character, but helps to craft the identity of a character. So I guess I was thinking of like a monk or a ranger or a druid, somebody who has a tea kettle and, makes tea. I've been into campfire activities lately because of Kingmaker. There's an entire new rule set involved in throwing things into a pot, cooking them, and gaining different mechanical benefits over the course of the evening. And I wanted something similar to that. And then I started thinking about poisons. Wouldn't it be cool to find a way to just like cure yourself of poisons or diseases? And this is sort of a restorative kind of a approach to my item creation here. So this is my general concept. How do I deal with poisons and diseases? Make tea. Ooh, my tea kettle could be a Brita filter. Maybe I can leach the impurities out. I don't know. So there were a lot of questions and thoughts and conflicting ideas I had, but I knew I wanted a tea kettle. You're not really going to hit people over the head with a tea kettle in combat. It would be amusing, but you're probably not going to do it. So it would be something of more of like an exploration mode kind of an item or a downtime item, something like that. So let's brew some tea, and it will. What if you can drink a tea and it will give you poison effects? And that's really what I landed on for this item.
Got it.
So my concept was, how do I drink poison, not get hurt by the poison, and then redirect the poison effects out towards other people through, fisticuffs or claws or something like that. And that really is how I got into this. So that all of that together was me just sort of hashing out a concept.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was all step 1. Step 2, define the item type. It's a held item. It's a coffee, not a coffee mug, a tea kettle. So that was easy.
Yeah, held item is one of the sections.
It's one of the sections in here. Yep, absolutely. Reference a section of your item.
We're going to read the paragraph here. Blah, 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 blah. It's a held item. Basically, what the paragraph says is it's generally not good to give this to martial characters because they always have something in their hands.
Yeah.
And it sounds like the abilities we want to give that this tea kettle gives is abilities for martial characters.
Yes.
So that means it's kind of going to be like an out of combat item, right?
Yeah, I was sort of picturing like you're prepping for the combat. Maybe you got a a big boss fight coming up, and you're like, okay, guys, we're gonna psych each other up. Everybody's got their iPods in their ears and AirPods, whatever the fuck they're calling it now.
Yeah.
And we're getting ready, right? We're going to the
Yeah.
fight. We're getting ready, and we're psyching ourselves up. So I'm over here brewing some poison tea, and I drink my poison tea, and it will be the effects will be available for 10 minutes, whatever the actual thing is. So yeah, that's what that was. Determine the quantity, ability consistency. I'm thinking once a day is fine.
Totally.
Just a one shot. How do I get poison out of my fingertips and into my enemy in one combat for like a minute? You know, 6 rounds of combat should be enough in one day.
Totally. So once per day for both effects.
Yeah.
Right. So the two effects we're talking about here are you can basically give yourself poison attacks, but also remove poison from like food or like an item or maybe yourself.
Yeah. And that's where I ran into trouble as I was crafting this item. I think I was trying to do too many things with one item and I wasn't sure what that did to the numbers.
Yeah.
So I wanted sort of like a purgative quality. You know, if I'm suffering from a disease or poison, I drink this tea and that leaves my system. And then it goes magically into the tea kettle itself. And when you drink from that tea, then you can send it back out. So it's almost like I'm suffering from a malady and I'm sending it right back to you. Was the concept I was running with.
Right. So
I didn't know how to math that out.
We thought about, so that's what sounds like to me, like remove poison as a spell. Okay. We've got a spell to work with. That's really good. If you can find a spell that does something very close to what you want it to do, use that as your guide in determining what level to do stuff. And then the other spell that we came up with was
God, what was it? It's the one that Eidolons you use on your Eidolons. God dang it.
It's a 3rd level spell that allows you to give your Eidolons or other companions poison damage.
The ability to deal poison damage. Yeah.
3rd level spell, give it to your friends
piercing,
or whatever, and then
bludgeoning.
Exactly. So we've got our concept and we've got our abilities or spell-like abilities, a 1st level spell and a 3rd level spell. And then we've got once per day. And it sounds like we also have kind of a restriction here, right? Do you have to have the poison absorbed into the tea kettle in order to use it?
Yeah, I figured that would be part of the process. So you're cooking your tea. Let's say it takes 10 minutes. You know, that's a decent amount of time for like a ritual in this game. You cook it up and then all of the poison leaches into the tea kettle. That starts the activation process from that point on to either the rest of that day or for 24 hours after. I haven't decided which yet.
Right. Probably until the beginning of your next the end of your next daily preparations is the term they use in the book.
Sure. Yeah. Thematically, it doesn't make sense to me, but mechanically, I totally get it. So that's kind of what I'm going with, just because I just need something. This is a rough draft. Nothing about this is a final product. But like you were saying earlier, it's almost like we're trying to throw spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks.
Absolutely.
And we can dial in the numbers as we finally get stuff in here. So what does that do?
Determine item ability consistency. So we talked about that. That's what we're just on. It's a once per day kind of thing. It's 2 spells. One of them is a 3rd level spell. That's the important part.
Yeah. So
so from there we just can determine the level, right?
The level of the item itself, right? So this
it's a 3rd level spell.
And you need to be a 5th level
caster
in order to cast it.
Okay. And we can cast it once per day?
Once per day. Yeah.
So if you look at the first page of the chapter, it basically says if you got a thing that replicates a spell once per day, it's got to be at least keyword
2 levels higher.
2 levels higher.
Yeah, minimum.
So let's say it's a 7th level ability.
5 to 7.
Right.
That's easy math.
Cool. All right. So we're at a 7th level item. But when Erik and I were talking about this item, we kind of like came up with this item, like an hour before we shot he already had the idea, but we wanted to kind of like work on it.
Sure.
And kind of rough it out because we were just as kind of like, we were working through this just as quickly as you guys are probably at home right now. I was thinking to myself, the book also says under consumable items like potions that generally potions, if this tea kettle allows you to make a thing and hold on to it and then drink it later, potions normally increase the level of an item because they're more powerful. Why are they more powerful? Well, it says specifically in the consumables section that they're more powerful because it takes 1 action to use the spell. So if we took a spell that normally takes 2 actions
Mhm.
and we turn it into a spell that only takes 1 action,
Yep.
that's pretty.
You're messing with the action economy of the game at that point.
Exactly.
That's
So I
what makes it
suggested to
fall apart.
Eric, well, why don't we make it 4 levels?
Mhm.
And then because of the specificity, you have to first take poison from something
Mhm.
in order to use the poison creation abilities of the item, right?
Yeah.
So because of that, we'll just like knock off 1 level. So we went from level 5, 3rd level spell, level 5. Instead of adding 2, we added 4
Mhm.
because it's a consumable item and it's more powerful than a normal spell in a can.
That got us to
But
9.
because it's like super specific to get this effect,
And you're not gonna be seeing it in every day.
unless you're just
Maybe
carrying
one combat a
around
day.
poison food with you all the time. You know what I mean?
And who doesn't?
Yeah, exactly. You know, maybe this goes back to the Disney character silhouette thing.
Mhm.
This is the kind of item where like Joe's carrying around rotting food now all
Sure.
the time.
Yeah.
Why is he doing that? Well, he's got this crazy kettle that he makes tea with the poison food, and then he drinks a tincture, and then he goes into combat and he drips with poison.
Mhm.
That's freaking cool.
Yeah.
Right? That's
the kind of thing you remember.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's character defining.
Yeah.
But because of the restrictive nature of this ability, I suggested maybe just knock off a level.
Yeah.
So we're going from level
So we went
5.
from 5 to 9 and then down to 8.
Yeah.
Is what we ultimately decided.
Yeah.
This is not an exact science. It's a little imprecise, but
Mhm.
these are sort of the thought process behind the values we threw on these things.
Absolutely.
I tried to make this way too complicated and do too many
You
things.
always are picking the hard ones.
Yeah, I know.
But
know.
I
It's easier to
think-
justify things from a lower perspective than it is from a mechanical perspective.
But this is
So I
a
tend to
great
start there.
example of creating an item that is a little more complex
Mhm.
and not as obvious
Yeah.
from of a design space.
So yeah, if you drink a tea and it causes you to envenom yourself so you can deal damage, what does that even look like? There's a spell in here. I think it was like envenom your allies or something like that.
Yep.
And I just literally took the language from that and the math from that and kind of started from there.
Mm.
So you drink this tea. What does it do? Once per day, you pour a cup of Blackfinger tea is what I'm calling it.
Cool.
And it grants the following effects. You envenom your attacks, which drip with highly toxic venom for the spell's duration. The first time each round a target hits a creature with an unarmed strike that deals piercing or slashing damage, that strike deals an additional 1d8 poison damage. A creature that is damaged by this poison must attempt a fortitude save. On a failure, it's also clumsy 1 for 1 round. The contents of this kettle go inert. I guess we decided by the end of that adventuring day.
Yeah, or the
before your
beginning,
long rest, your daily preparations.
Yeah. At your next daily preparation.
Yeah, and it's important to have it go inert. Otherwise, you can just stockpile, and that's your GM's gonna hate you.
Yeah, silly player things. Oh, I'm just gonna stop adventuring and start a poison business
Right.
with my kettle.
What if I take this really cool flavor thing that you made and just break your fucking game with it?
Yep.
What now?
Rod of Wonder, baby. Rod of Wonder. Oh, I have to tell the story. So in one of my favorite campaigns in 3.5
Mhm.
or maybe Pathfinder, it was when I was pretty young. I was playing with a group of Redbox nerds. I was basically like I want to say like a 13, 14-year-old boy playing with a bunch of fucking grown-ass adults. You know what I mean? And it was very sandboxy in the sense that we all kind of formed a community and we each had our own little shop or business that we were doing while we weren't adventuring.
Mhm.
It was really cool because the DM tried to take these downtime activities, well, what we call them now, as downtime activities, and create hooks out of them. So basically, while we were gone adventuring, we would come home and someone was fucking with our business.
Uh-huh.
Someone would change something. And then we had to go role play or fight our way out of it. So we'd basically go off, have an adventure, come back, and then have another adventure in the town that we're trying to form.
Okay.
So I was playing a halfling sorcerer who had an emporium of magical items.
Okay.
But the way it was actually a front and underground, I had levels upon levels. I think I had like 10 levels. I had like access to like some earth moving spells or something like that. And I basically just hired a bunch of like apprentice wizards to stand in a big block room, like 100 by 100 room, and take a rod of wonder and point a rod of wonder in a direction over and over and over again like for an 8-hour shift,
Uh-huh.
basically. This is like 14-year-old Robert coming up with these zany ideas because one of the 100 random things that a Rod of Wonder did was create like 1d100 gold.
Sure.
Right. So they were just hitting the button.
Right.
And some of the other things were like your sex swaps, and you create a rhinoceros or a stinking cloud, or I think you become petrified or something crazy like that. So he was constantly having to like find new help all the time. And these are the kind of zany things that a 14-year-old boy comes up with as like
there's always a way to break a game.
Yeah, exactly. So after a while, the DM started doing the math on the Rod of Wonder kind of racket I was running, and he pulled me aside and he's like, Robert,
we need to have a talk.
In this edition, having too much money did break the game.
Sure,
right. So he was like, all right, Robert, you've created some mob enemies, and they basically like attacked my business and destroyed my business, and we had a big altercation. But eventually, like,
does that feel punitive to you?
I couldn't. It could have felt punitive, but in the moment, it was so cool.
Yeah.
That it was like my business, like my idea, Robert hacked the game so much that the DM had to be like, no. That made me feel pretty cool. His 14-year-old boy or whatever, just being like, yeah, that's right. I'm like, that's the most munchkin shit you could probably do.
Sure.
Is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
And that made me feel cool. And I was, of course, I was like, yeah, it is pretty broken, right? So naturally, I was kind of actually cool with him allowing me to have the toy, play with it, and then take it away because it kind of began to break the game.
Sure. You got to use it. It's not like
Exactly.
you received it and then it was taken away before you got to experience your little personal shenanigans with it. Where'd we leave off? We had to find a level for this thing. Level 8.
Yeah.
So now I got to find a DC for this. This is step 6. So.
Pretty straightforward. I mean, we literally just look at the table.
Yep. So level 8 DC is 24.
Done.
Huzzah, moving on. Let's see. Secondary item.
Price. And we're on price.
Oh, the price. Yeah.
Yeah.
So level 8 price. I didn't think too hard about this. So between 415 and 500 gold pieces, let's just call it 500.
Yeah.
Why not? Err
Why
on the
not?
side of high.
Like at the end of the day, it does weird shit. We could probably put it somewhere in the middle, but it also has a combat application.
Yeah.
And when in doubt, err on the side of high,
Yeah.
especially if you're giving it to your players. Like if you're going to give this to your players, the most like the delta here, the difference is only 75 GP. And if they sell the item, they get half of that.
Okay.
So the real delta is like 30 GP, 35 GP, something like that. No, 37.
Yeah, and if we're quibbling over that, then it's an entirely different game.
Exactly. So at the end of the day, like so long as you get the level right and then appropriate the gold pieces, that range, just slap a number on it.
Yeah.
If you think it's appropriate, it is. The money's probably not going to break your game.
So now that I have all of that done, the final step is to find a comparable item out there and do a little bit of balancing. And this is where I just went too far afield.
Yeah.
So my intuition said, well, Eric, if you're doing an inflict or a cure poison and disease sort of an item, why don't you use a staff of healing as sort of your baseline for these things to compare against? And you told me that was a terrible idea. So talk to me about that.
Okay. So so staffs are actually pretty special because they're not just spells in a bottle. They're a collection of spells in a bottle that only like spellcasters can recharge. So I would say that because it's breadth and also depth of ability are so far removed from what your item does once per day, remember, that it's not an apt comparison at the end of the day. It'd be more apt for you to find another spell in a bottle that does a combat ability once per day. And then that's probably as close as you're going to get. But, and I'm ignoring so many of these interesting qualities that this magical item has, like the level 1 cure poison and the weird restriction on it. Not weird, but cool. You know what I mean? Like restriction on it where he has to absorb poison before it can create poison. So this is one of those cases where you got to find just like the roughest estimate of whatever you think is appropriate And if it's near the target, then you're probably doing a good job.
Yeah. And everything you just said, absolutely. And one of the things I want to come back to is on page 132.
Mhm.
It talks about designing by type. So, what kind of item are you creating? And I'm just going to briefly list them.
Yeah, go for it.
And each one of these categories of items has specific considerations that the designers are saying to consider if you're going to build them. So, there's alchemical items, ammunition, armor and weapons, held items, oils, potions, runes, scrolls, shields, staves,
Mhm.
structures, talismans, wands, and worn items. These are all different categories of items that you can build that require special considerations. So I thought I was building out of the stave category. And according to this,
Held items.
let's see, typically 1 to 3 spells per rank, all in a spell
Oh,
list.
I see what you mean.
A staff is always at least 3 levels higher than the minimum level. There's different math for building a staff. And that was actually not what I was trying to build. I was trying to build a what's called a held item.
Yeah.
And that has different criteria that I'm not going to bore you with. So knowing what category you're building into, are you trying to create a rune effect, a scroll effect, an oil effect, a wand effect, a worn item effect? This is an important place to dig into, spend a little extra time on, because it's easy to trip over.
And that's why steps 2 and 3 are almost the same step, but I broke them out into 2 steps.
Sure.
To make sure that you're focusing on the thing that matters most, which is defining which of these types of items you're making.
Sure.
Because like as we just explored, the type of item you're creating will vastly determine the difference in power that you'll end up doing based on the spell-like abilities you're creating.
And I like having the conversation about the type of item that you're putting together early in the steps.
Yeah.
And then the very last step circles back to that. Hey, by the way, we're going to go back to the type of item, find one and compare it.
Yeah.
And see if you actually did the thing you thought you were doing, which I did not. So it's a real cool, like, measure twice, cut once, kind of a built-in failsafe that I really appreciated. So yeah, my Blackfinger poison kettle is essentially a way to, before your combat, spend 10 minutes brewing the thing, you drink the thing, you get rid of poison effects, and then you put them in your fists and you go into combat.
Oh my
and you
gosh.
redistribute that poison to your enemies.
So I'm imagining
within a minute.
As far as a picture goes, right?
Uh-huh.
I'm imagining a kettle that's what's that black iron that you use for like cast iron? So I'm imagining a cast iron kettle, you know what I mean? A decent chunky size one,
right,
with a fat like spout to it, a real chunky spout. And then the top of it is just a disc. And the handle is one hand with very long, lithe fingers, grabbing the edge of the kettle top, like with the tips of its fingers, and the actual handle is the hand, and those fingers are connected to the circle. So you have to grab the hand. You have to grab the black fingers, if you will, to open it up and add water to it or whatever. I don't know. It's just a cool idea that came into my mind.
Yeah, there's plenty of places to go with that, and neither one of us are artists. So.
Yeah.
So
but we can still have ideas, little goblin ideas.
That entire thing probably took about 20 minutes or so. I spent more time in the conceptual idea than I did actually going chart by chart by chart by chart.
And that's why
to find my values.
concept and picture are step number 1. You got to have your concept. You got to ask yourself, what are we trying to accomplish here?
What is the point? What is the function?
Exactly.
What am I trying to enhance?
What do I think it looks like is also like another thing you should have in mind, because you have what probably what you want it to do or what purpose you want it to serve. Now, what kind of thing serves that purpose?
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. You can do that at the beginning and the end as well. You can do it in both places
or somewhere in the middle. Actually, that's what I ended up doing for my item.
Okay.
Actually.
What's yours?
So my item, I don't really know what to call it yet. I don't have a cool name. So I've got
that in a hurry.
I've got this player named Gabby. Gabby said to me, like, hey, Robert, I don't like shopping, and I'm playing this like rash barbarian who doesn't have a lot of cares in the world.
Mhm.
So why don't you let me discover all of the magical items, and you could just like give me the items that would be appropriate for my character. Gabby knows I love shopping.
Mhm.
So she's basically like, Robert, you can shop for my character.
Yep.
And I'm like, ooh, happy days. So instead of making a bunch of her items, just like custom as a way to
Mhm.
practice making items
Sure.
in the system. And so Gabby's level 3.
Mhm.
She already has her +1 sword. So we're gonna make her a +1 skill item, right? Um, and Gabby's barbarian named King. What is the first name? What?
Gareth King.
Gareth King. So ridiculous. That's why I love it. So King is this brash barbarian who likes to just break the front door down,
Mhm.
right? You know what I mean? And I was like, all right, well, every barbarian wants a magical item that makes their athletics checks better,
Sure.
right? So let's do that.
Yep.
Let's make an athletics check item. So I was thinking to myself, all right, I got Barbarian of Gorham. That's the other thing that's important. Their character is this young man who's trying to appease Gorham, the god of battle, the god of iron, right?
The god of finding the biggest kid on the playground and punching him in the face.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So with all that flavor in mind, I set out on the steps. I had maybe like some gauntlets or something hand oriented or like hand and shoulder like oriented,
Sure.
something like that. Um, so I figured maybe like a worn item. I noticed that a lot of the items that give you status bonuses, not status bonuses, speaking in first, I'm speaking out of turn here. They give you item bonuses to as static effects were normally worn items. So I went immediately into a worn item.
Mhm.
I read the section on worn items, and I was kind of surprised at first because worn items basically say they need to be invested, but they don't ever give you like a level over the spell.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
if it's this spell you're emulating, blah, blah, blah. And I realized that's because they have a freaking chart right in front of you. And it's like +1 to thing, unga bunga, do that, right? So this became a very simple process for me, right? Let's head down the steps. We got our concept. We defined the item type. All right. It's a worn item. Now we're gonna jump into reading the section. We read the section. It's basically like worn items have to be invested. Read the chart. That's literally the chapter. It's like one and a half paragraphs. Sweet. So determine abilities and their consistency. Okay. So it's +1 to athletics. We already got that part down. And I notice a lot of the other worn items have like a minor bonus to something within the skill, right? So many skill checks have actions you can take with the skill, and a lot of those items gave you a bonus to one of those actions.
Mhm.
So here's where I knew I had to be careful. Athletics is very powerful.
Yeah. Use it all the time.
Use it all the time, often in combat. And the book, in many sections of this chapter, references if it happens in combat, especially a lot, be extra careful with it, basically. And all of the other items, I know I'm number 8ing already, but in my perspective, I like constantly referencing other things in the game to kind of give me a guiding a light.
As you go.
Exactly. So I kept looking at these items and I was like, well, all these other items are like +1 bonus and a minor check.
Sure.
But none of them are like the minor checks are never in a combat situation. So I picked athletics, but I picked one of the non-combat focused abilities, right? So you can do swimming, you can do climbing, you can also do breaking down doors, right? And it does have the attack tag, but it's not the kind of thing that you attack other people with. Break open is the action. So I figured it was far enough away from combat in the sense of not hurting like another person's per se, that it would be fine to give a minor boost to. The problem is this action is very it's very succinct. It's basically like you do the thing, you do the thing without breaking it. Critical success, you do the thing without breaking it. Regular success, you do the thing, you kind of break the door. Failure, nothing happens. Critical failure, you do it so terribly, you jam the door.
Mhm.
But there was a minor little caveat in there that said, if you're trying to like break something open and not break it down, if you don't have a crowbar or something with leverage, you take a -2 penalty to it. So I was like, oh, perfect. So it gives you +1 to athletics checks, and it counts as having a crowbar or a piece of leverage when trying to break something open.
Sure.
And this began to inform what I had in my mind's eye for the item, right? So I was like, okay, crowbars are shaped like this. What if it's like gauntlets, or maybe one gauntlet that goes all the way up to your arm,
Okay.
like a battering ram, where
I'm seeing Jax from Mortal Kombat.
I don't know Mortal Kombat that well, so I don't
Yeah,
really know
yeah. He's
what
got
that
this
is.
big old silver arm that goes pow, pow, pow.
Sweet.
It's part of his bionic thing.
Oh, awesome. So I imagine like a gauntlet, like an iron gauntlet, because it's Gorham, right? It's Gorham themed.
Sure, right.
And there's like an arm plating that goes up the outside,
Mhm.
and then a big bulkhead shoulder pad that like replaces your armor shoulder pad.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? Like it's round, but then it has big metal studs
Mhm.
on it. You know what I mean? For breaking, because I guess studs are good for breaking. I don't know. But so it's like this big honking boy. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And I was thinking maybe you can like put your fist together and it like will lock together almost magically,
Mhm.
and you can like pry open doors with it, and like it magically helps
Like
you create
Jaws of Life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jaws of Life, but your hand,
Yeah.
right? Sweet. So I have my ability,
Mhm.
my minor ability attached to it, which is appropriate based on other things I've seen in the world, in the book. And that just informed step 1, which was my concept. It made that
Mhm.
more concrete.
Yes, it did.
So remember, what I want to impress upon here is that you can have a very vague concept. You can even not even know what it looks like. Just start going through the steps,
Mhm.
and you will end up inspiring yourself.
Yep. You'll double back periodically, just naturally.
And it just makes them more and more clear. You know,
Mhm.
it's like a blurry photo getting clearer and clearer.
Yeah, each step informs the one before it.
Absolutely. So, okay, we're pretty much done. We
Yeah.
just got to do all the other steps.
The charty stuff.
Determine the level. Okay, it's a +1 ability. Bada bing, bada boom. Bada bing, bada boom.
+1 skill item. Is that
+1
the
skill
one you're
item.
talking
It's a
about?
level 3 item. There you go. Price. It's athletics. I gotta make it max price.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
You know, it's gonna be used in its main ability is gonna be used in combat pretty often because it's athletics.
Yeah,
On
going
a
back to the
barbarian.
idea of, is it a primary item? Is it a secondary item? Is it a tertiary item? And this is certainly primary because
This ain't no tertiary boy.
nope.
No, he's a primary boy.
I want a goblin shirt that says tertiary boy on it.
Tertiary, like your
Like
sad
the beta
goblin.
goblin.
Yeah, the beta goblin. #tertiary goblin.
I don't know what that is, but that needs to be a thing.
It doesn't have a DC, but if it did, it'd be 17 because it's a level 3 item.
Because it says so.
Because it says so on the charty chart.
Yep.
Those are out of order. Who cares? It's the price. Price is 60 GP because that's the maximum for level 3.
Mhm.
And then we get to number 8. Compare it to existing items.
Yep.
This is the most interesting step. You know why, ladies? Goblins at home, little gobbos at home. Because Erik didn't do it, and I actually did. So here we go. What's interesting?
I did it.
about
I just
this
did it wrong.
Is and I kind of this is kind of a bait and switch because I knew this was coming while I was designing the item, and I was like, okay, I'm going to design it, rules as written, and then I'm going to compare it and realize there's a huge discrepancy. So when we look at the book, there's no level 3 items that give you +1 bonus to athletics checks.
Okay.
There's the lowest level item that gives you bonuses to athletics checks is level 4.
Okay.
Why?
Do we know why?
No, but I have a hunch.
Okay.
There's one item. It's called the lifting belt,
Sure.
and it gives you +1 to athletics checks, period. And then it also allows you to carry more bulk. And it has an activated ability, 2-action activated ability to like lift stuff. Right?
Okay.
And like make it super light, basically. So we have a +1 item
Okay.
with a secondary benefit, and then it has a 2-action activated thing that's even cooler. that pushed it over the edge from 3 to 4 in my mind.
Okay.
But you know what? I'm a conservative goblin. I want to make sure that I'm not breaking any games.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I'm just going to make the item level 4.
Okay.
No big deal. But on the price scale, I'm going to pull the price down.
I see what you did there.
I'm going to pull it closer down towards 75 GP instead of 100.
Okay.
So the maximum for level 3 is 60. The minimum for level 4,
75.
And guess what? The price of the lifting belt or whatever is pretty damn near close to 75 GP.
Perfect.
So I referenced other items. I found a huge discrepancy because of athletics, and I knew athletics was already going to be like a problem child.
And if anybody else has any theories as to why it's level 4,
for real,
plus
actually.
1 athletics.
Hey, Sifter, I know you're watching this video.
Every single one of them.
Every single one of them, and you watch them all from start to finish. So, like, why, dude?
Yeah.
Why, bro? Why?
Inquiring goblin minds need to know.
Inquiring goblin minds. So yeah, that's my item. My item doesn't have an activated ability, so it shouldn't push it in the next category like we talked about. It's just a level 4 item that's cheaper, and that's okay. You know what I mean? The worst case scenario, your player has to wait a little bit longer, or maybe I just give it to Gabby at level 3, and she has a level 4 item for 1 level. Who cares?
Yep.
It's honestly not that big of a deal.
Right.
You know what I mean? In the grand scheme of things, especially for this particular case, because the player doesn't care about money. They're just not caring about money.
None of us really do.
Yeah. Except for Amy. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, but that's other people's money.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. They like spending other people's money all day. So yeah, I got this item. They're like these Gorum gauntlets. So, it's alliteration or whatever. They help you athletics good, and they break down doors really well. That's it. That's my item. It's super appropriate to my player. They're going to have this cool item. They're going to find it probably after.
How long would you say it took you to do that entire thing from start to finish?
Not that long for me. It probably took me like half an hour, 45 minutes. Just because it takes me longer to like do things and
you researched a lot of items to
I read a lot of items and those goblins at home know I don't read good, just like a normal goblin. So it takes me twice as long to read most paragraphs. So like 30, 45 minutes, and I had a concept in mind, and I did do a lot of other research. I did a lot of Googling and searching on archives of Nethies and comparing and stuff like that. So I think for 30, 45 minutes, the joy we're going to see on Gabby's face at the game table, and they're going to be like, oh, fuck, bro, this is so cool.
Yeah, and the first time she Kool-Aid Mans through a door, we're going to have a scene to remember.
Gareth King Kool-Aid Manning through a door. Oh, yeah. Gabby is very exuberant at the table. They're the kind of
big
person.
goblin feelings.
Yeah, they're the kind of person who types in all caps a lot of times. So I'm just imagining the oh yeahs coming out of the chat.
It's cool. I like hearing you talk about crafting an item around the player's personality as well as the character's personality. It's sort of both things you were targeting when you were doing that. Yeah. And the rest of us know exactly what you're doing at the table because we know this player, this person.
Exactly.
So it's just really cool to see other people getting sort of like these customized gifts. And that will help me to remember her barbarian in the future, where I might otherwise forget it. Because I don't see a lot of Kool-Aid Man barbarians out there. I'm sure they exist. This one I'm just going to remember because that item made it possible.
Maybe I make the item red. Or maybe like the first time they do it, it'll be like, I'll have some sort of red explosion of paint happen on them or something like that. Yeah. And one of the NPCs will make a Kool-Aid reference. Oh no, Mr. Kool-Aid.
We could set it up.
You better put those stones back on the wall before my dad gets home.
Yeah.
My dad's gonna be pissed.
Hey, pass me that sugar packet.
Yeah, for real. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty much how to make an item.
Yeah. In a nutshell, it's 4 pages. It's fairly simple.
It's a short chapter, Goblin. Sorry about this isn't going to be a 2-hour episode today.
Yeah, no. Yeah. Especially since we forgot to talk about our games that we played recently.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll cover it later.
All right. That works for me.
Awesome. Do you have any other final thoughts about the item creation?
I want to see other people's items in the
absolutely.
comments below. Come over to Discord and talk about them.
Yeah, post them in Discord if you want.
I like everybody else's ideas because they're not mine. And my brain goes to very specific places, and it tends to be the same places over and over. So listening to the Kool-Aid Man Barbarian item, that's not a thing I would have come up with.
Totally.
I would have taken it a totally different way. So all of you guys out there have your own version of that. And I want to see your stuff. Let's see if we can craft some stuff and color within the lines here and make it usable at each other's tables. Because if we can use some of your items at our table, we'll talk about that. And that might be a fun thing.
That would be pretty rad, especially if we can create like a little player like repository of goblin items, goblin salvaged items.
And then seeing each other's, built items and built monsters and built characters being used in other people's tables.
And talking about using, your stuff in our games and stuff like that would be freaking rad.
That would be awesome.
Pretty freaking rad. Awesome. Well, I think that's it for today, goblins. Yeah. As always, keep it weird.